In this video, we're going to be adding measures to the report that we've been working on to look at our library loans. But what are measures? Measures are aggregations of the data in our columns. They often relate to numeric fields, but they don't have to. Measures are created using DAX, data analysis expressions. It's a formula language that's structured in a way that's similar to that of Excel formulas. Measures can perform calculations over multiple tables. For example, total loans last year. It needs the date table as well as the loans table. And we use these measures inside our visualizations. One key feature of measures is that they're only calculated where they're used, so you won't see them as a set of figures within a table. We're going to be creating a series of measures to use in our library report visualizations, and this includes total loans, total overdue loans, total days on loans, and even percentage change of loans year on year, as well as including a text-based measure which is a dynamic report header, as these can be helpful when explaining the context of the data that we're looking at. At this point, we are working primarily in the context of modeling data, and although we'll get to see the measures in the context of some of the visuals, we'll only be using them to validate the measures that we have used. So let's head over to the exercise and start building some measures. We're back in the My Library report. The first thing I'm going to do is to collapse the tables that we have here. I'm just going to demonstrate that we can actually right-click on one of the tables and we could add a measure into that table. But that's not what we're going to do. Measures can exist in any of the tables, but actually it's a lot easier if they just live inside their own table. So we're going to create one. Let's go to Enter Data. And we're going to create an empty table. And that table is going to be called My Measures. And then we can load this table. The first measure that I'm going to create is one called Total Loans. I'm going to right-click on My Measures and then select New Measure. The measure is called Total Loans. And we need to indicate that it equals, and we're going to use the function CountRows. And we're going to apply it to the Loans table. And then select that, and then close the parentheses. If I select Enter, you'll actually not see that anything happens. If we actually look at the data pane, look at the tables view, and we select on the My Measures table, you can't actually see the measure. You can see that it exists there, but I'm going to demonstrate to you how you can use this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change this count of loans here. It was just dragged in from one of the tables, and I'm now going to remove this. And instead of having that, I'm going to drag in this from our measures table. We're actually expecting it to read the same way. We can also do the same for our bar chart. Bring in total loans and remove that there. And we could do the same thing for our matrix. So it actually just brings in the same data, but with a measure, we can do formatting with it. And we can also do measures that look at those same measures. What I'd like to do now is to create a measure which is the total overdue loans. Now it's highly likely that you don't have any overdue loans, so let's go and make one. I'm in my model-driven app and I'm going to look at this loan for Macbeth copy 3 that was taken out by Alex Smith on the 1st of December. I'm going to go into that loan, select it, and I'm going to remove the date returned. And then save and close. I can check that this has worked. I can select on the loans and then go for overdue loans. And I can see that it's now 47 days overdue. For the purposes of this exercise, I suggest you go into this app, you make some changes to the data so that you've definitely got some overdue loans, and then return to the Power BI report. I'm going to select on the Home tab, and then I'm going to select Refresh. Now that the data is refreshed, I can go on to the table view, select on the Loans table, select on the PU is overdue field, and I'm actually only going to look at the ones where it says true. Then select OK. So I can see I have the same 3 items here. I'm now going to create a total overdue loans measure. I need to right click on my measures, new measure, we'll call it total overdue loans equals, and we'll use a new formula. We'll use the function calculate, select on calculate, and then what are we calculating? We're going to calculate total loans, but we're going to change the filtering. So it's comma PU is overdue, and then is equal to, and it's true. And then you need to do open brackets and close brackets or parentheses. And then we need to close the parentheses on the function and then select enter. We can see that the measure has been created, so we can go over to our visuals. I'm going to click on some white space, and then I'm going to bring in a card visual. Select on that, and I'm going to drag in the total overdue loans. I can bring it into the fields, or I can bring it directly onto the visual. I can see I have my 3 overdue loans. I'm now going to bring in a measure that works out the total loans in the previous year. Before I do that, I'm going to change this visual. I'm going to remove the full name column, and then I'm going to right click on my measures, new measure, and it's going to be total loans last year, ly equals calculate. And what are we going to calculate? We're going to calculate total loans, and then we'll add a comma, and then we're going to use another function which is called same period last year. Same period last year, and if we select that, and then we're going to look for a date field. We're looking for the dim date field, and then close the bracket on that, and then close the bracket on the calculate function, and then select enter. This function effectively changes the perspective of the filtering that's taking place, and it uses the date dimension to take away a year. The easiest way to see it in operation is to bring it into a visual. I'm going to drag the total loans ly underneath the total loans in the values bucket. It's done something, but we can't tell if it's done it correctly until we expand the 2023. Let's make this look bigger. Let's look at the figure for September 2024. We can see that there were 21 loans taken out, and it's suggesting that there were 19 taken out in the previous year. The previous year was September 2023, and we can indeed see there were 19 loans taken out. If we want to look at one of our individuals, we can select on them. Let's select on John Lee. And we can see all the numbers shift around according to the perspective that we've been using. Our measure has recalculated. If we want to create a measure which is a percentage change year on year, we'll need to know what the change is year on year. So let's create a measure for that. I'm going to right click on my measures, new measure, and the measure is change YRY equals total loans minus total loans last year. Let's see if that works. Let's bring that into our matrix. I'm going to deselect John Lee, and I can see that 2 is the difference between 21 of this year and 19 of last year. We now have the opportunity to calculate a percentage change year on year. I can now right click on my measures, new measure, and the formula we require is percentage change year on year equals divide change year on year, and the denominator is total loans last year. And we use the divide function because it deals with dividing by 0 in a way that doesn't create any errors. Select enter. The measure has been created, and I can drag it onto the values. The obvious issue here is the formatting isn't great for this. We can change that. Select on percentage, and we can remove one of the decimal places. It's important to remember that the change year on year and the total loans last year don't need to be on screen in order for the percentage change year on year to be calculated. So we can remove those. Take them out, and as you can see, the percentage change still calculates correctly. And this could easily form the basis for a line chart. Something else that would be interesting for us to measure would be the total days on loan. What we're going to do is we're going to go to our loans table within the table view. Select on loans, and we're going to add in a column. I'm going to right click on this, and then I'm going to select new column, and we're going to use DAX to create a column. The column name is going to be total days on loan, and then we're going to add in the calculation. The calculation is loans. It's going to be loans and date returned minus start. Then I can select enter. I can change the data type to be whole number and select yes. But there's a problem with this calculation. These books haven't been returned. So we need to change the calculation. Let's start again. We're going to say if is blank, and we're looking for the date returned. Close the brackets. Then it's today. Open parentheses, close parentheses, minus the date loan start. Otherwise, we can use the formula that we used before, which is the returned minus the start. And then close the parentheses. I can right click here on the table and I can clear all the filters. And as you can see that we have total days on loan for all of our loans. We can create a very simple measure for this. We can right click on my measures and then select new measure. The measure is going to be called total days on loan, and it's going to be the sum of the total days on loan. Close the brackets and then select enter. We can now move back to the visualizations pane, and we can drag it into our matrix, and we can bring it beneath the percentage change year on year. I can now remove this from the matrix. I'm now going to demonstrate a measure that you can use for report headers to make them dynamic. I'm going to create a little bit of space for myself there. Click on some white space. I'm going to right click on my measures, and then I'm going to select new measure. I'm going to call this report header 1, and then equals loans reporting hyphen, and then close the quote. Then we'll do an ampersand, and then we'll do if, and then we'll say has one value. We need to tell it a field, and I'm going to say it's the name, and it's going to be the full name. So if we only detect one student, then we'll need to use the formula values, and I'm going to type in name, and it's going to be the student full name. Need to pop another comma in there to tell it what to do if there are multiple values shown, and I'm going to do double quote. Then I'm going to close the bracket, and I'm going to now press enter. I can now use this within the context of a card, put the card on the screen, and then I can drag my report header 1 onto the screen. It says loans reporting now, and if I now select Michael O'Brien, then you can see that it changes around. And when we create the drill through report, we'll do a more complex version of this. As always, at the end of the exercise, press save. And this brings us to the end of the exercise. During this exercise, we added measures to my library report. We used measures that we created measures that use both numeric values as well as text, and we introduced them into our visuals. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in future videos.